Welcome to the Fighting on Film podcast, the podcast all about classic and obscure war movies, from the Normandy landings to the days of chivalry and swords. If it's been captured on film, we're going to try and cover it. I'm Robbie of RM Military History.
I'm Matthew Moss of Historical Firearms and the Armourer's Bench. Hello, welcome to another episode of Fighting on Film. This week we are looking at the Mosquito-heavy classic 633 Squadron from 1964.
Fantastic. And we have a tie-in giveaway this week, kindly provided by those kind folks at the Warbird Coffee Co. They're kindly giving away a bag of coffee of your choosing. So if you check the Twitter, the Fighting on Film Twitter, we'll be posting how to enter that draw when this episode goes live. Thanks very much to Warbird Coffee Co. I've tried some of their wacky wabbit coffee and it is delicious.
I definitely couldn't say that. Not with my speech impediment.
Oh no, don't put yourself down, mate. No, but thanks to them, it's very kind of them. Let's talk 633 Squadron.
Yeah, I haven't seen this film in a long time.
Oh, I hadn't either.
When you suggested it, I thought, okay, yeah, I haven't seen that in ages. I haven't seen it on TV in ages either, which is becoming more and more common with these films, I think.
It used to be like an ITV4 staple, didn't it? You know, ITV.
Yeah, along with like Mosquito Squadron.
Yeah, because I get these two mixed up a lot.
Well, they use the same footage. There's bits of footage that's used in Mosquito Squadron that is from 633.
Oh, wow, okay.
So I can understand why.
That makes sense.
So let's cover the plot and then we'll jump in with some of our thoughts. It basically follows a secret raid in the run-up to D-Day. There's some concern about V2 bombs hitting the marshalling areas and possibly the beachhead. What the RAF does is they plan a raid to destroy where the fuel for the V2s is made. The fuel is made in a fjord in Norway. And the only way to knock out this heavily defended, heavily reinforced factory is by blowing a cliff down onto the factory.
Yep.
Now, that's a Nazi megastructure if I've ever heard of one. Why that hasn't been covered in the show, I don't know.
You can totally see. You can see that, can't you?
Definitely. The only squadron capable of doing this mission is 633, which is a Mosquito squadron.
The best.
The best of the best.
Yep.
And there's a little subplot of some Norwegian resistance fighters. They bring all the information out about the defences and such. And there's going to be a ground element where the resistance fighters knock out the anti-aircraft gun positions around the factory.
Yeah, and then there's a little bit of a love subplot in there. It all sounds quite simple, but there's a lot going on. The characters. So Harry Andrews, he plays Air Vice Marshal David. So last week he was a sergeant in Korea. This week he's a vice marshal. So he's switched jobs and he's got a massive promotion. Harry Andrews gets around, folks. He sets out the plan. He tells all the pilots and Mosquito pilots what they'll be doing. You've got Wing Commander Roy Grant. He's your leader of the Mosquito Squadron. He's played by Cliff Robinson.
He portrays an Eagle Squadron pilot, but obviously by 44, the Eagle Squadrons had been disbanded and returned into like US Army Air Force.
Ah, okay.
Maybe he just hung around. And
he played Uncle Ben in the Spider-Man trilogy, the 2001.
Oh, of course, yeah.
He played Uncle Ben in those.
He won an Oscar in 68 for Charlie.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, big
so
names.
He's a big name. Like he's a good actor, and he was an experienced pilot as well.
Yes, of course he was.
But he didn't fly during the war. He was in the Merchant Marines during the war.
Lieutenant Eric Bergman. He's the leader of the Norwegian Ling, the resistance fighters. He's played by George Chakiris, who become a megastar for appearing in West Side Story as the leader of the Shark Gang.
Oh yeah, of course. He's one of the three Georges, right?
That's it. Yeah. Oh yeah, from Great Escape. Yeah, from the scene from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood where Leonardo DiCaprio says that he was beat out of the Great Escape by the three Georges, Chakiris, Peppard, and I forget the last one. But yeah, it's a great scene. I think he's possibly one of the standout actors. Then we have Hilda Bergman, his sister, played by Maria Pershey. Good thing you mentioned Great Escape there, Matt, because we have Flying Officer Hoppy Hopkinson, played by Angus Lenny.
Yeah, he sort of pops up at the beginning of the film, then we don't see much in the middle of the film.
No, we don't.
And then he's there again at the end of the film.
He's the only one that survives, actually.
He is.
It's quite funny.
Spoilers again.
These actors probably were on Mersh contracts because I know that George Chakiris was on Mersh Company, who produced the film, the Mersh Company.
It's Walter Mesh, wasn't it, the producer?
Yeah, that's it. So I think Angus Lenny must have been on a...
Yeah, like a retainer or something. Yeah.
Something like that, yeah. It's nice to see these little connections between movies, especially in the order of when the podcaster episodes are released. And so we've had 2 Harry Andrews movies now.
Yeah.
So that probably segues us into production a little bit.
Oh, before we move on, we've got group captain Don Bartlett, who was played by Donald Houston.
Okay.
Who was in Where Eagles Dare.
I see.
He was one of the German double agents.
Yeah, no, I see it now. Brilliant.
He's the group captain that joins the mission at the very end, and it's his bomb that actually dislodges the cliff. And he actually was in the RAF during the war.
Oh, fantastic. As I said before, it's produced by the Mersch Company, released on the 4th of June 1964, had its premiere in London, directed by Walter Grauman. Now, he's an interesting character. So he flew B-25 Mitchells during the war. And the biggest credit I can find after 633 is directing something like 50 or 53 episodes of Murder, She Wrote in the 80s, which I think is an incredible shift.
That's a lot of episodes of Murder, She Wrote.
It is. A lot.
Yeah, I looked him up too, and he seems to have predominantly been a TV director. You don't get that feel in watching 633.
No.
Doesn't feel overly TV-ish.
And his experience of flying Mitchell bombers really comes through. He knows how to shoot.
Yeah, it must have informed it, yeah. I wonder if he was behind the choice of having a B-25 cameo.
Oh, I assume so. And that's what I thought. When I found that out, I was like, oh, definitely. Getting your old... I wonder if he was flying it, possibly.
Maybe.
You never know. So we've got that immortal soundtrack. It's the thing the film is sort of, everyone knows it for, don't they?
Yeah.
But it's by Ron Goodwin. So he did the music for Where Eagles Dare, did the music for Battle of Britain, Operation Crossbow, so many beloved great war films. And it's just an amazing soundtrack guy.
Soundtrack guy.
So it's budget of 1.3 million.
Respectable.
Yeah, I could only find an initial box office take. It was about 1.7. So over the years, it must have made its money back.
Yeah, I did read it. It made its money back even just in the initial British run.
Oh, well, there you go.
Because it
of course,
was all filmed in the UK.
Yeah.
So the costs were kept fairly low. It runs for about an hour and 34.
Yeah.
So it's not overly long. And it did quite well. It was quite popular.
Definitely.
It predates, some of the other big movies.
So this is pre-Battle of Britain, things like that, Hamish McHaddy, DSO DFC, was technical advisor in the film, and he was a Pathfinder, number 8 group RAF. So he helped find locations for dambusters. He also worked on Operation Crossbow, and he flew Mosquitoes. So his expertise come through, and he actually owned a Mosquito that he bought.
Wow.
And it was used during the filming.
I mean, how many running? There's 7 Mosquitoes in the movie, and 4 of them were running, and 3 were just taxiing. Yeah,
they were T something tugs. They were retrofitted to look like fighter variants.
Oh yeah, they put the fighter bomber variant where they put the guns at the front, and yeah, that's right. I think I read that too.
The airfield scenes were filmed at RAF Bovingdon, and the Scottish Highlands mountains of Glencoe. Well, not only do they fill in for the training sequences in Scotland that obviously are in Scotland, but then they fill in for Norway as well. So then that becomes too obvious during the end of the movie.
Yeah, it looks nothing like Norway.
But it looks like the same place they were at the start. It's a bit jarring.
It does. I mean, it helps that the end sequence is entirely a model.
Oh, thank God. Yeah.
Sequence. But yeah, the bits with the Norwegian underground, they are it's quite obvious that they are not in Norway.
So I've got a retro review again.
Great.
And this one comes from the Daily Mirror again. They're a rich vein of content on the old newspaper archive that I use. So this comes from June the 5th, 64, the day after release. We've seen it all before, but rarely have modern Hell's Angels been presented with such rip-roaring visual impact. They crash into fjords, swoop through flak, and perform miracles of devilry in a film that owes much to the stuntmen and camera wizards. When the picture is not airborne, it's a bit too conventionally grounded, with its slight but acceptable plot. Cliff Robertson as the squadron's ace pilot and George Takaris as Norwegian resistance man seconded to the RAF earn their wings for likeable performances. The girl in the proceedings is blonde Maria Pershey, George's sister and Cliff's sweetie. But the romance is a mere hint, and Miss Pershey does not intrude too much on this he-man's world of blazing aerobatics.
It's not a bad review.
I read a few others that weren't as kind to the acting.
I can understand that, yeah.
The other review on the Sunday Mirror says it would give Oscars to the stuntmen, which I thought was quite a good little ad.
So the actual special effects were done by Tom Howard, who used a mixture of miniatures and projections and matte paintings. There's some really good like model work, planes running into ground vehicles, and the air
Really good
on the airfield.
Yeah.
And then obviously the end sequence where they're attacking the base. That's entirely modeled. And there's some good sequences of them in the cockpits, and the cockpits get damaged. He was an Oscar winner, so he knew what he was doing.
Yeah, there's individual elements of the movie that work really well, but then there's elements that just don't hold up. I mean, at the time, I'm sure they would have been an absolute spectacle.
There's worse looking films.
Yeah, 100% worse looking films from the era. But now I think it's maybe starting to look a little bit too dated. Another production thing we should mention, that the scenes where they actually attack the fjord is George Lucas's big inspiration for the trench run scenes in A New Hope.
Ah, cool. Okay, makes sense.
From this and the Dam Busters, he cut the elements that he liked and put them into, he cut them into the trench run scenes to then sort of edit them in the same style.
Storyboarded off of it and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's videos on YouTube that sync stuff up. You can definitely
cool. Okay.
There's a scene where an X-wing goes into the trench, and one of the Empire's laser cannons is tracking it
like the anti-aircraft guns in the fjord. Okay.
Swap out X-wings for mosquitoes in it. So should we move on to the alley tally before we get into anything more?
Yes.
Fantastic.
It's time for Alley Tally on Fighting on Film.
So what have you got for the alley tally this week, Rob?
Mosquitoes. I mean, who doesn't love a mosquito? The Wooden Wonder. They're fantastic. They've got that. Mm-hmm. They look cool. They sound cool. They're the plane when some people think of the RAF in the Second World War. I'm a Typhoon fan myself, but I can love a mosquito just as much. So as I said earlier, there were T-33 tugs, variants that were used and fixed with gun barrels. But my real alley pick this week, and I can't, because we've not had them for a couple of weeks now, and I was itching. I was getting a little bit deprived of them.
I think I know what's coming.
There's Bedfords in this one, folks. There's a lot of Bedfords in it. And Bedfords
some of them are hidden.
Some of them are hidden, yep. And there's Bedfords in RAF roles, which is always nice to see. So we've got a Bedford WM, which they feature heavily in the landing sequences, things like that.
Yeah, on the airfield, yeah.
We've got a Bedford QL refueling tanker, painted red, should really be painted green.
There is a green one that gets driven into, but there's a model.
Oh, is it? Ah, okay.
One of the mosquitoes that crash lands during the airfield attack sequence.
Yeah.
Tumbles and rolls into one that sort of explodes a bit.
I was upset when the Bedfords got killed.
Well, no Bedfords were hurt in this film.
Yeah, they were. The Bedfords.
One Bedford was hurt.
One Bedford was killed. KIA. There's a Bedford OY mocked up as an Opel Blitz that Chikaris drives, and
that's the one that gets killed. Yeah. That's what I was thinking of anyway.
You meant okay, so the fire tender is a model. Oh,
yeah, the one that the plane rolls into definitely is a model.
Oh, that looked. When I watched it, I thought that was real. That looked really impressive.
It's Tom Howard. He did good work. There is a Saracen in there as well, isn't there?
Sticking out like a sore thumb Saracen, mocked up as a German half-track.
Some lads sat on the top of it.
Yeah, there's a trend in these movies. They do in the Dirty Dozen as well, where people sit on top of APCs.
Get inside them, lads. That's what they're for.
There's a reason that they're armoured, is so you don't get shot. It's very weird.
Isn't there a fire engine too on the Bedford's fire engines?
Yeah, there's a fire tender. Yeah, that's what it is. They're painted red.
Actually, there's a couple of Land Rovers that are in there as well that shouldn't be.
Oh yeah, they try and mask it with a tree.
Yeah, there's one that's hiding behind a bush. Yeah.
And I was like, that's a lightweight Land Rover.
There's a couple of legit looking Jeeps, but then there's a few Land Rovers that shouldn't be in there.
No, a bit weird, isn't it? I think that's maybe when they were filming up in Scotland, maybe they were unit.
Definitely, yeah.
Production cars. So Matt, there's one standout this week for the alley tally for you. Regale us.
Yeah, it's got to be the Stenmark one.
Such a rarity.
It is. There's only two films that really portray them. It's this and Heroes of Telemark. Interestingly, both sort of Norwegian-based.
Yeah.
Sort of like resistance movies. But the Mark 1 star is a really interesting one because it's when everyone thinks Stengut, they always think Mark 2. which is the quintessential cheap and nasty little. But the Mark 1 Star is that step between the Mark 1, which had a bit of wood on it, didn't look quite as bad, towards something that's a bit more utilitarian. They take off the wood, they remove the flash hider to make it a bit faster to produce. Only 100,000 of them were actually made during the war. You never ever see photographs of them, contemporary photographs of them in service, which is really, really weird. So I've looked into it and I haven't yet been able to find out where they actually all ended up. Occasionally see some Mark 1s in Home Guard service, but predominantly with Home Guard, it's Mark 2s and Mark 3s later on in the war. So it's really interesting to see these. And we looked at them as closely as we could with, the available resolution that we had. And there's a few giveaways that sort of hint that they are actual, at least one or two of them are legit Mark 1 stars. So on a Mark 3, the magazine housing actually rotates to allow it to be stowed a bit more easily, especially for paratroops. So there's a big spring at the front of the magazine housing. And when you pause the movie in certain places, that spring isn't there on the Sten guns. And there's no rib along the top, so it's not a Mark III that's been mocked up.
Yep.
It's quite clearly a flush tube receiver, and there's no spring catch at the front. So it is a Mark 1 star, or at least a Mark 1 that's been modified. Who knows? Because interestingly, there's one that Chikaris has, and it has a T-bar stock, which is the classic Mark II.
I only noticed that when you pointed it out, which was...
Yeah, I only noticed it when I paused it on that literal one scene. And the one he carries throughout the film has the T-bar stock. The Mark 1 star and Mark 1 had this sort of a little bit more involved sort of tube stock with a butt plate. Perhaps that Mark 1 star has needed a butt, and they've just taken a Mark 2 Sten and put it on, because they're all interchangeable. That bit is interchangeable amongst... You can put most... butt stocks on most variants of Stem. That was my only pick, and there's some really great scenes of it being used. So at the beginning, you see them hiding, and the film begins with sort of an assassination of a German officer in ambush of a...
It's a Kuberwagen.
Yeah, a little Kuberwagen, and they have a little explosive charge in the road, and that knocks out the car, and then they light them up with the Sten guns. And then we later see them when Chikaris' character drops back into Norway. Yeah, and he's bringing weapons, and he's going to organize the ground element a bit. But everything goes south, and there's a gun battle around a toppled Bedford come Opel. And
a Bedford Opel Y, probably should call it.
And so there's some good Sten action. You get a few good looks. My other pick is the Fairbairn Sykes fighting knife.
Oh yeah.
That we see.
One of the Norwegian lads uses it to dig a hole with, doesn't he?
Yeah. So at the beginning again, they take out a couple of German stragglers quietly with them. Don't know why they decided to go with knives and just shoot them, because they've already blown up the car.
To look cool. Was it? Yeah. Was that line in Lock, Stock, Chris guns for show, knives for a pro? Maybe that's what they were thinking.
Maybe that's what it is. Yeah, they wanted to get across that these lads are commando trained. So you get a bit of that, and then one tries to dig a hole with it to bury a parachute. Probably the worst possible digging implement you can imagine. There's some Lewis guns, and there's blink and you miss it Vickers K guns as well.
Yeah, there are aerial mounting with the dual mounting. It's really nice to see.
Yeah, and an anti-aircraft pit at the airfield.
Because you get that really funny bit, and I don't know if you noticed it, but I always wondered why the guy does it. When the mosquitoes are landing in that first sequence, you see a shot of the airfield. And there's a guy in the little Lewis pit, and he's got the Lewis guns on, he's wearing them. I don't know how you would say it, but he follows them in with his Lewis guns. And I'm like, well, don't shoot the mosquitoes, mate. They're yours.
So, okay, there's a couple of things with this. By 1944, British airfields would have been much better defended than just a pair of Lewis guns on an aerial mount.
Yeah. Yeah, they didn't have any Bofors guns or anything, did they?
Yeah, they did have Orlikans and Bofors and stuff. Hey, do you know what? Considering that George Lucas sort of took some influence from those, I wonder if, oh God, it's in a number of films, but there's always a guy that when there's it's a starfighter or an X-wing or something coming into land, there's always a guy with a little gun that aims it at the...
Yeah. You mean in, oh crikey, in Return of the Jedi when they're landing on Endor?
Yeah.
Or is it Endor? Was it?
There's a few in like the prequel trilogy as well, like on Naboo and
like
stuff.
A trope. Maybe it's a trope we just don't know what.
Maybe he saw like that Lewis gun guy like following the landing mosquito.
I like it because there's that bit in the Family Guy parody where he goes pew pew, got him.
Yeah. Oh my god, yeah, that's true.
But the Norwegian guys look cool anyway. Yeah, you've got Chikaris in his like parka. You've got his mates are in like leather jackets with the World War One cavalry bandoliers on.
Yeah,
they've got like a rack full of SMLEs in their little hideout. They look really good. For me, like I hate to say it, but in a movie about aircraft, like your ground sequences are really, really good. It's like
I would have liked to have seen more Norwegians. I'll be honest.
Same.
They do. They look cool as fuck. Honestly, they do. They really do.
They're really believable as well, I think.
Yeah, given that everyone is doing bad speaking English with a Norwegian accents.
Yes, we have to get to the dock to the fort.
She's doing an Austrian accent, I think.
Yeah,
and he's doing Greek.
It's
I'm guessing
odd,
like this. Yeah. There's a weird. I don't know what's going on there. So I guess that wraps up Ali for this week.
Yeah, it does.
So, Robbie, what have you got for your favourite scene this week?
So, as I mentioned in the Ali Tally, I know it's going to be a bit weird to talk about like your ground combat scenes in an aerial epic, but I think they really stand out for me. So, the bits with the Norwegian resistance, but just because it breaks it up a little bit. You don't get any scenes like this in the Battle of Britain. You don't get any scenes like this in Memphis Belle. It's a bit of an anomaly. So they're obviously important to the plot. So Harry Andrews goes, look, the resistance are going to blow up the anti-aircraft guns on the run into the fjord.
Yeah.
So they're really important. So when I was watching, I was like, oh yeah. So they're going to have like a massive assault, when the Mozzies go in and it's going to be cut into, Norwegian.
Yeah, we're going to get like a huge like Guns of Navarone sort of like.
Something like that. That's what I thought. I was like, it's going to look so good. And then you kill them off. And I was like, whoa, hang on.
Yeah.
It's weird. So I like the bit where Chikaris goes in on the B-25 Mitchell. Looks great. Mm-hmm. Lovely to see a Mitchell. When do you ever see him? So he's sort of riding back in this Opal that they've captured, and they're saying,
I like the bit where he lands and he loads his Sten gun.
Does look great.
Yeah, but he holds the magazine though, which lets it down.
Yeah, a little bit. He's a resistance fighter.
Don't hold the magazine, guys. That's not how it's done.
He doesn't have as much Sten manuals as you.
Probably true.
Very true. By this point, I think the Germans are sort of onto them.
But how?
I don't know how. Yeah.
I'm going to come back to this later. This is one of my points. But yes, carry on.
So they're chasing them, and Chikaris, there's like a checkpoint, and he's like, just follow my lead, like drive through it. And it's a bit cliche to drive through a checkpoint, but he somehow throws a Mills bomb out of the other window.
He does.
Mm-hmm. And explodes.
Into a very, very sandbagged position.
Yeah, and it completely wrecks it. And they just drive off, and then there's a shootout.
Got the classic sort of like the guy in the sandbag pit jumps out of the pit.
I'm surprised it wasn't a Wilhelm scream when he went up. So that's really good. I like that. We mentioned it on the Ali Tally.
Yeah, the driver's having a ball. He's loving life. Steering wheel's on the wrong side, but he's loving it.
Yeah, it gives it away. It's at Bedford, doesn't it? But yeah, and then the bit where all the Norwegians get ambushed at the end made me a bit sad. So I was like, oh no, now the fjord's going to be like fully covered by 3 anti-aircraft guns.
Okay, before we move on to what my favourite scene is, let's discuss a little bit about why the Germans knew that they were coming and they had all of their ambushes set up.
Right. Chikaris gets captured after that scene when the Opal Bedford OY gets toppled over. They've got him in this SS headquarters.
Yeah, it's like a Gestapo prison, isn't it?
Like a Gestapo prison, yeah. So there's this whole really melodramatic scene because by this point, Cliff Robertson's character has fallen in love with Eric's sister.
Yeah.
So you get this subaltern RAF officer, and he's like, they've got him, Grant. You know what he'll do? When he talks, he'll give away the positions. He's like proper like laying on
it's
thick.
Donald Houston, isn't it?
Yeah, he's really laying it on thick to him. And Grant's like, if I do it, can you blow up the Gestapo prison before he talks? It's like, oh my God, okay. At any costs, Harry at any costs Andrews, isn't it really? Um,
Basically.
Yeah. So Grant's like, it'll kill her. You won't just be killing him. You'll be killing the sister too. You know, it's like proper melodramatic.
But he does it. He does it. And,
of course he does it. Yeah.
And then after that, they go on the raid.
Yep.
So the prison bombing, I suppose, takes a lot of inspiration from Operation Jericho. Instead of, killing Bergman, Operation Jericho was a raid on a German-held prison in France, a Gestapo prison, I think, and they bombed it to sort of rescue French resistance members. They bombed the outer walls. They bombed a hole into the wall to allow them to escape out, and a lot of them did escape.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was in early '44. So there's an interesting parallel there, and that was by a couple of Typhoon and Mosquito squadrons.
And there's a great video on YouTube by the Operations Room, friend of the podcast. He's got a great animated in time sort of sequence videos. Fantastic. Check that out.
Oh, cool. But the Germans know they're coming, or at least they know the Norwegians are coming, because they've laid ambushes for all of the various ground elements that are about to attack.
Yeah.
So the Norwegians are shown getting ready to go. They've got that great scene where they're throwing the SMLEs to them as they're running out of the cave, which is great.
You get an SMLE and you get an SMLE and you get an SMLE.
They send the go message and they all start moving in, and then one by one, all the sort of
patrols,
Norwegian patrols, the sections are cut down by Germans.
So there's a reason they don't fight back as well as they could do, because Harry Andrews goes, get more men for your mission, and Chikaris goes, well, they won't be trained. And then Andrew's like, I don't care. Just, I'll give you more weapons. They need to go in whether they're trained or not. So that at least in that sequence, the fact they didn't react properly or they didn't fight back as hard makes sense. But how in the hell do they know where the Norwegians are even going or where they are? Because Chikaris hasn't talked.
It isn't even hinted in the film that he has talked. So it's a bit confusing. How do they know they're coming? It's kind of a plot hole.
A massive one, yeah. That you could fly a mosquito through. Massive one.
Yeah.
But you had a theory about why.
Yeah, I do have a bit of a theory. So maybe we could rewrite the film. We're gonna do FOF headcanon again, guys.
Oh, it's been a while.
So my theory is, okay, so we could rewrite this film. So instead of Chikaris's character being captured,
yep,
once he parachutes in, what you could have had was at the beginning of the film, Chikaris and a couple of other Norwegian sort of resistance guys are seen doing that ambush.
Mm-hmm.
You could have had one of those guys in a more prominent role, and he's the guy on the ground coordinating, the build-up of the ground forces ready for the assault. And he's captured.
Right.
Maybe he's captured taking a Sten gun to another resistance cell. He's the guy that gets captured and taken to the Gestapo prison, and he's being interrogated. The British find out, and they have to bomb the prison, just like they do in the film. But instead of it being Bergman, it's another Norwegian. You could have Bergman go in the Mosquito on the raid, and he's the guy that pushes the bomb. He pushes the button, and he releases the bomb on his friend. And then you would have had that key character on the ground at the end. So, with the Norwegian leader dead, they have to drop in Bergman again. So he has to return then instead of earlier.
And then his death would have maybe had more weight.
Exactly.
Because the way they kill him off in the movie proper, there's this horrible looking overlaid explosion on Chikaris's, he's tied to this bed.
Yeah, the ceiling sort of falls in, and then so they could have had Chikaris leading a full-on attack on the anti-aircraft positions, and he was killed there. And that would have that they could have had that mirrored by the guys, and one by one the Mosquitoes are being picked off, and one by one the Norwegians are being picked off, and finally his character gets killed.
Yeah, I think it's a shame that there's no trade-off.
And that would have punctuated that sequence really nicely, because it kind of just becomes one Mosquito after another, flying towards that cliff.
That's one of my criticisms.
If they'd broken it up, that would have been really cool. So I don't know why they didn't do that. That would have been possibly a better plot.
It's an odd choice, just an odd scripting choice for me.
Yeah, and it's interesting to note that when they go on that raid to bomb the prison, Angus Lenny. No, it isn't Angus Lenny. It's another chap, because Angus Lenny goes missing in the middle of the film. So it's another chap who's just gotten married, and he's a young idealistic artist.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Very sadly, when they land back, they crash land, and he gets badly burnt and he gets blinded. And his wife comes to him to Grant at the middle of the film and says, "Isn't it sad that he's had his face burnt off and he's blind?"
Yeah.
And Grant just like stands there looking at her and doesn't know what to say.
No, it's a bit jarring.
It's a very odd scene.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's a bit.
But that town is quite clearly somewhere in
Scotland,
the UK or Scotland, because there's red telephone boxes.
Yeah.
And he points to the prison, and he goes, "There's the building," and it's a church. We cut away to a model of the prison, and it's a completely different building.
Getting blown up. And I do like the bit though with that raid where the SS officer comes out in his black uniform and he's like pointing at the mosquito to aim the machine gun fire, and he just gets like a 20mm cannon round in the face and goes down.
He's like, ah.
Great, like proper commando book
It is.
stuff.
It's very commando, isn't it? The whole movie is a bit commando.
Really commando book stuff. So Matt, your favorite scene?
Okay, so my favorite scene is the scene where the two pseudo Messerschmitt 109s attack the airfield.
That's a great one. That's a good one.
It's a great scene, but it's completely fucking ludicrous. Sorry. It is. In 1944, two marauding ME 109s would not have attacked an airfield. They wouldn't have gotten through.
Isn't there some tales of there's got to be some tales of that happening? Surely.
I don't know. I will say now that I'm not like an RAF air war expert. I'm definitely not. So if there was, that's fine.
Yeah. It doesn't seem implausible to me that
no,
they could got through. Okay.
I mean, if it had been set like 3 years earlier, then yes.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But, by this point, we have air superiority. We have radar. We know.
I see. No, it's because 633 Squadron Airfield was only defended by 2 Lewis guns. So...
Well, this is why it's my favourite scene.
Yeah.
This is it. So we got these two marauding ME 109s that aren't ME 109s. They're 4-seater trainers.
Right, okay.
Messerschmitt 108s. Is what they are. Okay. So that's why they look weird. So they're attacking the airfield, aiming at the ground crew, not the planes, aiming at the ground crew.
That's strategy. See, take out the crews, because you can't replace crews as easy as you can replace aircraft.
Maybe that's what they were thinking.
Sneaky.
The only defence that the RAF has at this point is this plucky chap with 2 Lewis guns on an AA mount.
He's giving it some. It really is.
That's my favourite scene.
Give that man a VC.
I love the mosquitoes, and I love the sort of fjord attack. It's great. The model work is brilliant for the time. But just that plucky chap on his 2 Lewis guns.
It's really impressive. And but that whole, we talk about more about the aerial bits, because we were in danger of doing a whole episode on 633 Squadron and not talking about aerial combat at all.
Yeah, that would be a faux pas.
That would be very funny. But yeah, so the scenes when the mosquito comes in and crashes, when
well, we mentioned it earlier.
Yeah, but it's when Grant comes back from that raid.
Oh yeah, when it's on fire.
Yeah, that's really good. It's the stakes feel raised, definitely.
It's great when the RAF rescue guys arrive and clamber up on top, and he's giving it some with a claw hammer to try and get the bombardier out.
Everyone's going. You get the 2 lads in the squadron who are just sort of watching. They flag down a Bedford and get in to go and help. It feels quite natural. It feels It's one of the only times in the whole movie where I thought they felt like a squadron. They actually felt like a group of men, not just a random bunch of actors.
The pub scene's a bit like that too, though. You got a little bit of...
Yeah, that's when they feel like a unit. But then after, they just they're not important. The film doesn't really care about them. Yeah.
You don't see them, really.
You don't, do you? No.
After those pub scenes, and there's the briefing. I mean... They're
not really important,
You see them in the planes, but you don't really see... They're not integral to the plot. So Angus Lenny's character just disappears.
That's it, yeah.
And I suppose this is a good moment to sort of mention that, the interesting representation of the Commonwealth. So you got an Australian guy, you've got Grant, Cliff Robertson's character, who's an Eagle Squadron pilot, American.
Yep.
And then you have India. It's represented. So you have an Indian pilot who is Flight Lieutenant Singh, played by Julian Shearer.
But it's just a shame they don't do enough with them. In that end combat scene, when they're going through the fjords, but when they start going down, for me, it switches from credible action sequence to sort of, not farcical's the wrong word, but the way some of them go down is very Boyzone commando book-esque.
Yeah, well, Singh's playing literally kamikazes. Once Singh gets wounded or mortally wounded, his navigator bombardier guides the plane down into actually, hit the
rock
cliff
face.
Yeah.
And then because then one of them flies directly into a Messerschmitt to take it out.
Yes, he does. Yeah.
Another
he knocks
one
out one with his front cannons, and then another one comes in. Cliff Robertson's character is absolutely terrible as a wingman.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I'll cover you, but never covers anyone ever. I'll get those bandits. Oh no, I haven't gotten those bandits. Oh, sorry.
None of them peel off to deal with the Messerschmitts, which I think is quite funny. It loses it a little bit because they will start sort of sacrificing themselves and things like that. And I'm like, oh, okay, now it's a...
Well, yeah, I think those, it falls into one of those...
like hero tropes.
Tropes of the ensemble piece as well, where you don't really get to know the characters as well as you could to have that emotional impact at the end of the movie. Whereas, like, if you take Bataan, you get to know each and every character, and it is a little bit laborious to get to know all of those characters, but when each of them is killed,
there's definitely more weight to it.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, as we said in the episode when we covered Bataan, you feel it more when, certain characters are killed in that movie. Whereas, with others, possibly including this one, you don't have that connect.
No, they don't. And the parts of the film that could have afforded itself maybe a little bit more time, especially with the character, the chap who gets burnt after that raid. The scenes with Cliff Robertson falling in love with Grant falling in love with Eric's sister. Mm-hmm. Those scenes could have been far better served with building your character. So like, oh, this is the squadron going to the guy's stag party, or having a drink before he gets married, so we can feel the emotional weight of a young pilot just getting married, then getting horrifically burned.
Yeah.
At least then you'd feel you'd feel a bit more emotionally involved than just this nameless chap who gets married off camera, then gets horrifically burnt, then his wife, who we haven't seen,
is brought out to confront Grant.
Needs something, because even Cliff Robertson as Grant, his character isn't all that likable, really. I mean, he's just there, sort of thing. Angus Lenny's the likablest, like Angus Lenny and George Takaris are the likablest, most likable characters for me.
Well, thankfully, Angus Lenny survives. He survives and gets taken to Starglove 3 and meets up with Steve McQueen, doesn't he?
Does, yeah. He gets wire happy.
Yeah, sadly.
I think we should move to the final thoughts, because we were swaying in there, weren't we?
We were, yeah.
So, my final thoughts. I do like 633 Squadron. I don't hate it. It's a classic. It's the soundtrack is worth the omission.
The soundtrack, that theme is brilliant.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
And you can hear that he's going to go on and do Where Eagles Dare, and that is peak war movie theme.
That's really good. But there's a thing for me that it's a bit of a disconnect, and I only realised it. I watched a couple of times this week. When the raid is finally on, and they've brought the earthquake bombs up to bomb the cliff, right?
Why do they bring those in on a tractor?
It just looks good, I guess. It looks good.
Like, they bring them into the base on a tractor.
They have men at like the on guard position with bayonets on. It just looks a bit weird.
And a 60s hatchback, a white hatchback, drives along the A road that's like behind them.
Really?
Yeah.
I wonder who's like now, who's like mum and dad or like grandparents, or
that's me nan's Vauxhall Viva.
Yeah, it's a bit weird. But do you notice in that sequence, the camera work gets better for some reason? So they have that lovely sweeping shot of all the mosquitoes getting armed and things like that. And they have the crane going up, like crane shot. It's just really weird. It's like they save the money for those sort of
They might sequences. Have done. I mean, that might be it, yeah.
Yeah, and then one little thing that lets it down for me is there's no standout performances acting-wise, I don't think. Harry Andrews is giving his best, but I don't think the script's great. But he
doesn't have a lot to work with, I would say.
He's playing a hard ass, isn't he?
No nonsense senior officer, basically.
And then he gets the really cool line at the end when the the spoilers, the raid doesn't go very well, and all of them get killed. Basically.
Well, it goes well. It just doesn't have the kill death ratio everyone would have liked.
No, yeah. He gets a great line where he goes, "Oh,
you can't kill a squadron."
Yeah, then Harry Andrews, you can't kill a squadron. Yeah. It's a great line. He gets in the car, looks all pensive, doesn't he? So he's like, "Oh gosh, what's happened?"
It's like that was necessary, but that was a high price to pay.
It's my last criticism. And I know I've had a few, but I've got to get off my chest. There's only so many 1/35th scale mosquitoes you can see smash up till it gets a little bit repetitive.
Yeah, I suppose so.
My only criticism.
Yeah, it does sort of detract from it a little bit too.
Yeah, just a little bit. But it's good model work, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, there's some of the model work. That last sequence is a little bit, you can spot the model work.
You can.
I mean, we know it's model work. It's very good model work.
Of course we do, yeah.
But some of it's a little bit too outlandish to be, or the planes don't quite crash how a mosquito probably would have crashed in a fjord.
Yeah, they're like they look like someone's put a firecracker in an Airfix bottle half the time. Yeah.
But all in all, it's a solid movie. And it is one of those classic sort of Sunday afternoon war movies that thousands of us have watched.
It really is.
And of course, The Last Bomb does it.
Yeah.
It's the classic Commando.
It is really Commando-y in it. Yeah, I think that's what it's sort of why you can't hate it.
Yeah, I mean, it's for that audience. They've all got like 60s haircuts.
Yeah.
It's not too serious of a war movie.
I mean, it's not as bad as like Mosquito Squadron that comes out after.
It does, and there's no doorbell in this like there is in Battle of Britain.
Yeah, the famous Battle.
That's a big plus for 633.
Who is Battle of Britain doorbell on Twitter? We don't know. It's not one of us, by the way. Before you all think that.
I haven't got the time.
We haven't. No. We're reviewing these movies for you every week. We haven't got the time to pretend to be doorbells, people. But yeah, I mean,
that was a very elaborate way of saying it's not us.
It's not us.
It's almost like we're trying to deny it.
Oh, Matthew, maybe it's you. It's a classic. I mean, I'll watch it again.
Yeah, it's a fun movie. It's not up there with like the top tier of classics. It's not a Battle of Britain. It's not a Longest Day. It's not, it's not up there with those sort of like 60s.
It's not a Dam Busters, is it? It's
not. No, it's not a Dam Busters. That's true. It tries very hard, and it
has its place. I think that's what we're trying to say. It has its place in the genre.
It's great to see mosquitoes.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Yeah.
This and Mosquito Squadron are the only films that really do mosquitoes. Fascinating to see that side of the RAF where it's not fighters and it's not bomber command. It's that sort of intermediate,
And late war representations of RAF too is really nice to see. It's not just Battle of Britain, or it's not just bomber crews. It's nice to see fighter bombers doing different things, which is always nice.
Yeah.
So thanks again to Warbird Coffee Co. for offering the giveaway for this episode. So I'll be putting out the how to enter that one on the Twitter page,
which is at Fighting on Film. So be sure to follow us over there.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. Turn on your notifications if you haven't already to make sure you always are alerted when we put out a new episode.
Oh, and we also have the quiz coming up.
We do.
30th of April is the second Fighting on Film war movie quiz.
It is. So it's this Friday coming up. If you're listening to it as this goes out today, it's on Friday the 30th. If you listen to it after, unfortunately you've missed it, but there will be more. So thanks again. That was 633 Squadron. I'm Robbie, signing off again.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Bye.